Welcome to another iGrow season at APC. We're so glad you've tuned in. Our church is blessed with excellent teachers of the Word of God, and our hope is that you find today's teaching enlightening, motivational, and encouraging. To learn more about our church, visit theapc.org or find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. So sit back, relax, and enjoy today's lesson.
Tonight we are going to go ahead and continue on with kind of the same theme as what we introduced last week. Taking this whole study from the verse in 3 John verse 4 where it says, I have no greater joy than to hear that my children walk in truth. So we're just going to keep drilling that all throughout this series. Last week we talked about the need for us to really train our children. And we spoke about how being a parent, it requires us to be super intentional. It takes time, and how we can't approach it as a lot of people in our world are approaching parenting from the aspect of, I'm a friend to my child, right? We're not going to take that mentality. So tonight, we're going to take this conversation, and we are going to apply it to parenting in the digital world. Okay, the world we live in is a digital world. Would you agree with that? Yes, absolutely. 100%. Our kids are all part of a generation that they don't know life without the internet. Like, isn't that interesting? That is super profound to me. So, we often, or I, hopefully you guys are the same, but I reflect on like my glory days are before the internet, right? And I love to talk to my kids about, this isn't how life always used to be. We know what it's like to live life without all of these technologies, but our kids, they can't even begin to fathom what life, looking up a phone number in a phone book. They don't know what that is. They don't know what a payphone is, right? We drove by there, and I can't remember, we were in a small town, and they're like, what is that? So we had this conversation about how there are payphones, or there used to be payphones, and we recently told our kids about how the newspaper used to come out with a TV guide in it, and that's how we would find what we really wanted to watch on television. Was we would highlight, like, we got to be home at 7 p.m. on Thursday because this is on. Yeah. They literally, they can't imagine what life like that was like. And the same is true for us. They can't connect with us in this area, and it can be a challenge for us to connect with them when it comes to the need, that perceived need that they have to live and interact in a digital space. Okay, so there's a little bit of a stretch that we've got to work through, and it's something that we have to spend time thoughtfully considering and really seeking for God's wisdom whenever it comes to operating in this digital space and allowing them to operate as well. So today, we're going to really talk through why does this matter, and then we're going to go in deeper about how technology has evolved so quickly and these trends that are threatening our kids, and then we've got some recommended devices and ideas and tools that you might want to implement. So why does this matter? Why does it matter? I want us to consider for just a moment, none of us would be willing to drop our kids off on a street lined with drug dealers or child predators. We wouldn't drop them off there, shut the door, and drive away. That sounds absolutely absurd.
Correct.
Agreed?
Yeah.
However, many of us are willing to allow our kids to step into this digital world without giving it a second thought, and we're not even considering it to be the same thing, as much of a threat or as dangerous as letting them out on that street lined with the drug dealers and the child predators. Okay, it's a big deal. So we're going to talk about the 5 different threats that we all need to be aware of, not an attempt to scare anyone, right? We don't have to be afraid, but really what we want to do is educate all of us when it comes to the digital world, because it's only growing, it's not going away.
Right.
So first, we're going to look to God's Word, and we're going to understand the weight of these 2 scriptures that are up here. Matthew chapter 6, verse 22 to 23 says, the eye is the lamp of the body. So if your eye is healthy, your whole body will be full of light. But if your eye is bad, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light in you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Okay, and then Luke chapter 11, verse 34 and 36 says, your eye is the lamp of your body. When your eyes are healthy, your whole body also is full of light. But when they are unhealthy, your body also is full of darkness. See to it then that the light within you is not darkness. Therefore, if your whole body is full of light and no part of it dark, it will be just as full of light as when a lamp shines its light on you. Mm-hmm. These are really weighty scriptures. Our eyes. It really amplifies what our eyes mean. Our eyes are the gateway to allowing us to process the world that's around us. You know, we take information in through them, and Jesus, he's reinforcing. He's saying this a couple of times to get us to see, hey, this is a big deal. He's presenting it to us multiple times here, and he wants us to understand that there is importance to the things that we're allowing ourselves to see. Whatever our eye takes in, whether it's light or it's darkness, right? And we have to consider, is there a true light within us, or is there a true darkness within us? And it's one of those weighty questions we have to ask. And we're talking about this from a perspective of applying it to our children. But before we can take it to our children, we have to first ask that question of ourselves. You know, we are often in the digital world, and we're using it for a source of entertainment. And so something that we really have to be honest with ourselves and ask is, what am I allowing myself to be entertained by whenever I am in the digital space? After we get that question answered, then we need to start considering, what am I allowing my children to be entertained by? So as a parent, we're held responsible for what we allow in their lives. And that being said, we have to be educated about what we open them up to. We can't avoid it, right? It's huge. Avoidance isn't an option. Hosea chapter 4, verse 6 says, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. This verse, it directly applies to the digital space. If you're familiar, I love the book of Hosea. If you're familiar with the book of Hosea, you know that God, he instructed the prophet Hosea to go and take a wife that was a prostitute, Gomer. And in their relationship, Gomer is consistently leaving Hosea. She's chasing after these other lovers. And this is this beautiful illustration that God is using, where Hosea is a picture of God and Gomer is a picture of us. Okay? And we all have to be honest and see that within ourselves. And this applies directly to the digital world, because there are so many lures presented to us in this space, these different lovers of sorts that we can all cross paths with, whether intentionally or unintentionally, and we have to be careful that these things don't lure us away from the Lord, right? So my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge, and we don't want that to be true of us. So we need to understand and acknowledge that this really does exist, and learn to operate in this space with this godly wisdom. You know, we're going to have some tough conversations with our kids, because our kids are going to hate us in some instances. They're not going to be happy with the boundaries that we place for them. We have to make some adult decisions, and we have to really focus in on Jesus and the facts that we see laying out all around us. So it's important that we understand what we're allowing our eyes to take in. First step in that is we have to acknowledge what is happening. Okay, so I was looking at some different studies, and there are tons of studies on the iGen generation. Okay, an iGen person was born between the years of 95 and 2012. Okay, and there have been so many studies on them, and what these studies are saying is this generation specifically is facing this severe mental health crisis. And the data that they're pulling is saying that there's a correlation between this mental health crisis and the use in their digital usage. Okay, and so we can't deny that this exists. Like, there is something happening, and we have to allow ourselves to dive in and see what's causing it. You know, we say that we are all connected. You know, we know that we are connected virtually. Okay, I work with someone that she is in Europe. We regularly exchange information, right? We have phone calls. Right. But that doesn't mean that I'm truly connected to her, right? We may be connected across these distances, but it's not a genuine connection by any means. we're actually less connected. And that's what these studies are showing, and specifically with this generation. You know, people in the iGen generation, they're saying that they're less involved in school activities. They're less likely to volunteer. They are less likely to have sex outside of marriage. They are less likely to participate in drugs. And those two things are really, really great, right? However, whenever you go back and you look at the root of all this, the reason that they're not doing any of these things is because they're homebodies and they're tied into the digital world. Okay, so we really have to keep our eyes on this. And they have this addiction, and we don't demonize them. Many of us have that exact same addiction. But it is playing a toll on mental health, which really amplifies our own need to be educated, because none of us want our children walking into that same sort of crisis. We are all called to guard our own heart and guard our own mind, and it's our responsibility to do the same for our children. So before we dive into this and really get into the nuts and bolts and the cool things that we're going to talk about and the things that we need to be aware of, we have to kind of lay some ground rules that we're going to approach this study the same as we did last study. We all go about this differently, right? Just as our parenting techniques are different, your parenting techniques are different, the way that we choose to operate in the digital world is different, and that's okay. Yep, we're just here to present some information, just some things to get us started. It's okay to say no to digital whenever it comes to our children, but we can't say no just because we're too lazy to dive in. Okay, I draw a hard line whenever it comes to social media with my children. No, we're not operating in that realm. I've done a lot of research, and Brian and I have decided this is not okay for our children. There will come a time when yes, but at this point, no. And maybe you believe differently. That's okay, right? But the whole point in sharing that is it's okay to say no, but we have to be educated in why we're saying no. We have to level set with our kids. We have to get in their mind that just because we are connected all across the world, that's not a genuine connection. They have to understand that face-to-face connections are more valuable than what they're going to be doing in the digital space. Okay? And really outlining boundaries for how technology is allowed to be used in our homes and when they're going to be allowed to access these different spaces. You know, if we allow them to operate digitally, they have to know nothing is private and nothing that is shared can be unshared. So we have to have some super transparent conversations with them about what that means. For those of us that do begin to tiptoe into the digital realm, we have to understand we can control who or what speaks into the life of our children. Yes. And we have to be very careful about paying attention to what's happening in the lives of our children. I told Jessica there was a texting conversation that was happening with one of my kids and a friend, and this friend was not in a good place mentally, and her text messages were then impacting my daughter mentally. And so we got to a point, I said, okay, we're going to let her know that she's not allowed to text you anymore. And we cut that conversation off, and it was like a breath of fresh air. Suddenly she was back to herself because there was a voice that was speaking into her life that we didn't give permission to speak to. So we have to keep our eyes open in those moments. We also have to be thankful when we operate in the digital space. We're going to see some sin exposed, and we need to be thankful when we do see that sin exposed, because that is an opportunity for us to correct it. I don't know about you, I pray that when my kids are sinning, I want that sin exposed. I want it exposed at an early age so we can correct it. Yeah. This is really a blessing and an opportunity for us to teach them, right? Yes. And the last thing, if we decide to tiptoe into this space, we have to protect sleep patterns and healthy habits, because a lot of that mental health crisis has to do with they're not sleeping, they are digitally connected. So my word, Macy and Tessa, some of their friends, they're not going to bed until 2 or 3 a.m. and they're getting up and they're going to school the next day. Like, how do you function? You can't function healthy with that amount of sleep, right? So there's hard lines that have to be drawn. So with that, we're going to go ahead and dive in and talk about the evolution of technology.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take this on, and again, I appreciate like what we're talking about, and I am one that will admit I refuse to get into the nuts and bolts of this thing because it is overwhelming. There is so much out there, and I have friends that I connect with, and I'm like, I don't even know where to begin. And my kids, my oldest, you guys know Layla, she's about to be 9. So this is early for me, and I don't even want to think about it, but I have to because it's our world, and I can't put her in a shell forever. And when it comes to the digital world, we wanted to really set it up digitally because that encompasses everything. And we're going to dive into all of that here, but I wanted to start us off a little bit with some facts, and I wanted to kind of let you guys think through, and you can answer if you want out loud. This is an open space, but in a culture where almost everything is digitized, I want to ask you, how many digital devices do you own? Can you count? Can you name them all? And I mean, now there are digital fridges, and what's another one? Laundry. Like you can connect your laundry to Wi-Fi and do the laundry remotely. Yeah. I don't have those. I don't know why you would need a smart washer or dryer, but they are. So like if you really think about it, and these companies, so for my State Farm gift, I was given a ring. Like, you know what a ring is? Yeah. The doorbell ring. And I never had that in my life. And I told myself before, I'm like, that would be cool, nice to have, but, I don't need it. So I have it, and I made, like, my whole family go through this whole thing to put it together. And now I'm like, do I really need this? Because you're connected virtually, Wi-Fi, and, like, criminally, it's great, because I can connect it with the police in case things are happening. But, I don't know. That's a different topic.
It's good. It's a good thing.
It's a good thing. It is.
For some, probably not for all.
But some of these technological things are disguised as good things, and they're not. So, with that, I want to kind of give you some fun facts that I have found. So, as of April 2022, this is the latest data that I found, there are more than 5.25 billion internet users worldwide, which is 66.2% of the global population. So we're over half the global population of being virtually connected.
Wow.
Yeah. And 347 million internet users in North America alone. So I was just like, wow. So some of these are like staggering. Some of these are just eye-opening. So according to Statistica.com, their study shows that digital technology, due to the constant digitization, if I said that right, clearly dominates over analog technology. Kind of like what Jess was saying, since 2007. 99.9% of the information generated is now in digital format. There's like 0.007% of it not, which is not even a percent.
No.
That's how much is impacted in digitally. Let's see here. What else did I find? Per eMarketer, the average U.S. adult spends 3 hours and 43 minutes on their mobile devices. That's roughly 50 days a year. Can you imagine that? If I make it even smaller, there's 52 weeks in a year.
Yeah.
Roughly a day a week. That's crazy.
That's not hard to believe.
And that's the average. I don't want to know what other people's average is.
I was gonna say, it's not
I feel
hard to
like
believe.
it's not.
When you see people in their car doing this.
Yeah, and that's fair too. Some of it's multitasking. We were talking about it. Some of it's audiobooks. Some of it, but just to think about it, about 1 day a week,
Wow.
completely dedicated to media. Let's see here. So, going back a slide, that's adult usage. That's not including children usage. And I did find child usage, but it was from 2017, which I think is a moot point at this point.
No.
It's not valid information, but at that time, let's see here. What did it say? Kids were about the same amount of time. It's 2 hours and 15 minutes. Okay. But that's still, 5 days you shed off the year? Like, yeah. So they're close, and I'm sure they're either close
more.
behind us or more now at this point.
Probably more, I would guess.
Yeah. And then I thought this was interesting. I couldn't put it all in a slide because the slide was the actual image was very impactful. But Jess was talking about sleeping habits and ensuring that your child gets to sleep. So this was an interesting thing to digest. So in 2020, this was in 2020 every minute of the day. You can see users stream 404K hours of video. That's every minute. Facebook users upload 147K photos, while IG users post about 347,000 stories. A minute. We're talking a minute. I'm not talking more than a minute. YouTube users upload 500 hours of video per minute. Spotify, 28 tracks. And Amazon, 6,659 packages are shipped every minute. In 2020, I couldn't find one for 2022. And it gets, you look at Uber, you look at DoorDashes, you look at everything. This infographic showed just about everything.
I would have looked to see before 2020 what did you, this is from 2020.
Just from 2020 alone.
Yeah. I wonder what it was
Before.
like 2019,
Yeah.
before COVID.
Before
That would
COVID.
be interesting.
Yeah, I agree.
That would be interesting.
Yep. So-
That Amazon,
Yeah, probably.
So our data never sleeps.
No.
And our children will never sleep. Because they're always about the latest and greatest, right?
Yes.
If it's happening every minute, can you imagine? It just blows my mind. And then an interesting thing. So Jess has a marketing brain, and she pulled something out that I thought was interesting. A question sheet I was provoked to think through. I'll go back. What is the influence, she posed, what is the influence behind what we and our kids are looking at, though? What are your thoughts?
It's interesting. So I love marketing. I went to school for marketing. That's what my degree is in, and I work with marketing. And so I want to believe it's all genuine and wonderful, but not all marketing is, right? It's all designed to influence your behavior in some way, shape, or form. So anytime we are online, we have to ask ourselves, what are we being influenced by?
Right.
And I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but
Yeah.
there's some things that they're designed to keep us in a space longer. And so you just really, when you start to think about there's some yucky stuff going on,
Yeah.
right? Some things that don't feel right.
Yeah. They may appear shiny, but once you start getting into it, I don't know if we want to partake in it.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we really wanted to get into was what's going on today. We could talk about the past, we could talk about how it's increased, but technology is always evolving. And as we speak, people in that space are fighting tooth and nail to be the first ones to end up to be named something, to create a new metaverse, or be the first one in setting the standards for what we're going to step into in like 10 years. So with that, we're going to talk about 5. We've narrowed it down to 5. The last 2, we'll probably glaze over it because it's a little bit above my own head, and I don't want to scare you guys or give you deer in the headlight looks because I'm still trying to digest them myself. But at least I want to make you aware of them. But the first one is gaming and chatting, and we're going to dive into that. The next one is social media, metaverses, and then the last 2, internet stack power and web 3.0. So that's what's coming. All right. So our first one is pretty easy to understand, right? You're talking about next level gaming and chatting, and I've kind of separated each one in 3 categories: what it is, the threat, and then how do we combat the issue. So gaming and chatting is an online and app games. So it's just all online that allow users to connect with other users. That's all we really want to do, right? connect, quote unquote. Today's games and those that are set for release in 2022 will be more engaging, connected, and addictive than ever. So that they're trying to get more people into gaming. It's just what it is. The connected nature of gaming spills into social media environments, which are havens for gamers who want to organize themselves with like-minded friends from all over the world. That sounds nice, right? You want to connect with people all over the world. You want to see who's like-minded, just like you. You want to make friends. It's the best. But here's the threat. As more kids use games, there will be more people who will want to harm them in these spaces. So once you start opening the door to chatting, I don't think gaming in itself, I mean, there's, like, in our home, we game. Like, we have video games that are age appropriate for our children. They are helpful to help, they help them in our, what we feel is their, what's it called, their multitasking brains, where they can do two things at once and they can, manage. There's just something, I should have looked it up more. Yeah, it's just, there's some more educational games. And that's what we're choosing to step into. But we draw the line at any interconnectivity with the web. They are not, there's no headset, web, nothing. Like, we just don't. And that's part of it is because I am afraid of what's out there. You hear that these gamers range from 5 to couch potatoes at home. So you just think about the audience. So anyway, that's where I'm talking about. I'm talking about next level gaming. So some effective ways to combat this safety issue is make sure you know who is and isn't, or make sure your kids know who is and isn't appropriate to connect with online. Like, that's a conversation that you can have with your children and say, hey, if things are happening, you need to allow them to, you need to be specific as a parent. Here's an example that I found. If I'm in a game chat with a friend and he invites his friends to join us who I don't know, what should I do? Like, what should you do? That's a good question to ask yourself as a parent. Like, how are you going to navigate that space? Like, what are you going to show your children? What are you going to tell them? It's like stranger danger, but virtually.
Well, honestly, they could be saying there's somebody they're not, though, also.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the trust
Yes.
is not there.
It is not there. Absolutely, 100%.
Their minds aren't fully developed enough to be able to know that.
Yeah.
They don't know the difference.
They don't. I know. So another way to combat this issue is to control nighttime online access. You as a parent have that ability. If you've already opened that door, there's no harm in closing it. I have this example where we had opened the door for Layla to have an iPad. It's an old iPad, but we'll get into more of those technological tools. But we shut it real fast once we saw things that we did not agree with, and she just had to be butthurt about it for about a week, and then we moved on, and it's fine. Everything's fine. She still wants to be in that space, but I'm like, sorry, I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready, and it's okay to admit that to your children. And then ensure that your child knows they can share anything with you. I think that's a big one. With anything, just make sure you have a safe space for them to land. And going back to our parenting from last week and bleeding over to this week, we want to make sure that our children know that they are loved just like God loves us, and that they have grace, and that they will make mistakes, and we will make mistakes with them, especially in a space that is constantly changing and evolving. And what we're talking about in 2022 is not going to exist in 2027. I don't know. I'm thinking of a
A few
day.
years from now,
I know.
literally.
So we're going to have this conversation again. And we're going to be like, yeah, we were dumb previously. Well, here we are. We thought we had it.
Really.
Okay, so the next space I wanted. Oh, go ahead.
let's go back one more thing. Something else to keep aware of with the apps is maybe not so much the connecting with others, but the ads that are presented to them. We have had some really inappropriate ads popping up on apps that were free, and we thought it was appropriate, and no. So there's so much.
Yes.
That's another component.
That's a good point. I was actually talking to my mother-in-law about this lesson this morning, and she was like, I downloaded this game for Layla, and it's I thought it was a good game, and lo and behold, there's these ads, and these ads are so inappropriate. I finally was like, nope. Like, you just don't know, and that's okay. And you just kind of have to just shut it down and start again.
Well, in their ratings, whenever you go in and you look at their ratings, what they say is appropriate for a 9-year-old is not appropriate for anyone in my home. So we really have to look and see what they define is appropriate. We can't just say, oh, it's appropriate for, I can't remember the chunks of ages, but you can't go by that. You have to dig into the nuts and bolts of what that means to them.
For sure. So our next space is social media, which we're all well in tuned with, I hope. And I hope I don't enlighten you, but I enlightened myself with this whole study. So in social media, one of the most empowering attributes of the internet is that it allows everyone to have a voice. Everyone in the moment has an opinion. This makes it also one of the most troubling aspects of digital spaces where moderation and community guidelines fail at preventing harmful content from being shared. Yes. There will be content shared. It just is, and you see it, and now we have this nice little unfollow, hide, whatever option in whatever social media platform you choose, but that doesn't do anything. And kids don't. We're talking about kids. As an adult, I know to do that myself. That's a boundary that I've set. But as a kid, they have no idea. They have no idea. Anyone can say almost anything to anyone at any time. They have a way to connect with anybody. It could be an adult can speak into their, just like we were talking about the voices and that influence our children's lives. It could be an adult. It could be a child their own age. It could be a young child bullying an older child. It doesn't matter. It exists.
It'll hurt.
Yeah.
It can hurt them too.
It'll hurt, and that's part of that's the threat here. It's increased anxiety, trauma, and uncertain behavior among children and teens.
Yep.
And although the social media driven aspect is quote unquote regulated, so we think, it's really not. There are school violence threats that are not credible. So if there's a school violence threat through TikTok or Snapchat or any social media area, officials will not take it as it's credible, and that has happened before in schools that have had, but the schools have had to respond against that.
Wow.
Because, and we'll get into it in a little bit, but because of legislation and state officials, they don't understand the impacts of social media. They don't really truly understand. There's just so many things that we're about to uncover that you're going to be like, oh my gosh, I don't even want to open that can of worms, but we have to. So there's just things like that. And now we were talking about digital devices. We have a Google Home in our house that I unplugged not too long ago because I like it. I'm like, hey Google, what's the weather or whatever. But I read this, and it's in TikTok. This 5-year-old girl, no, it wasn't TikTok, Alexa, this 5-year-old girl asked Alexa to do a challenge, and Alexa said coin outlet challenge. And that's what she did. It's all over the news. Yeah, I tell my kids, these things, these are the internet, and you're asking the internet to do something for you. So those little things where I think they're cool, they're great, they improve my life, but what are they doing for my children? So again, those are the threats there on the screen. But how can we find effective ways to combat that? It starts with us. We have to reimagine mental health. We have to talk about it. We have to engage other parents. We have to be cognizant that mental health is real, and we can't take it at face value. We have to really truly see our children for what's going on, sadly.
I feel like, I know I grew up and mental health wasn't a thing.
Right.
Like, it was shoved under the rug, or maybe hidden because no, that ain't happening.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's a big thing.
It is a big thing, and there's a resource that I was reading through. It's Physiology First. There's other, like, you can go online and find some medical research that can help young people cope with, or can help you identify mental health. Because as a parent, how can I put this? I don't feel like I went through that like you did, like you were saying. I didn't grow up with mental health issues, thank the Lord. So I don't know how to identify if my child is having some issues.
Right.
So that's where I have to take this and go back into my home and be like, put my mental health hat on,
Right.
put my psychology hat on, put my technology hat on that I didn't know I had to wear. Well, here we are. And then be observant, engaged, and informed. Give your child plenty of judge-free space to share.
You just answered your own question.
I did. There you go. I got ahead of myself. I should have just read my notes. Then this also it says uses resources for intervention. It's on your sheet. Bark is a good resource for intervention if you want to dig into that. Brother Kyle put together a lot of those notes that you see in your packet today, and it gives you kind of a breakdown of what each item is and how you can incorporate it in your home if you wish. There was something, but you kind of already talked about it. I had it written down that you were going to talk about it around here, but that's okay. We had talked about, you're fine. We had talked about the iGen generation, and what was the age that you said that they were still living in their home? You had pulled something, and it like really spoke to me.
I don't remember. What stood out to me was the fact that their transition to adulthood has been postponed.
Oh.
Substantially. Like, I think that they're now saying that their brain is not fully developed until they're like 25 or 26, where that used to be like 18.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
I think that age of moving out is like 26 or something like that.
Yeah.
It's much later.
Wow. That's crazy.
can't
I was
believe
ready to leave at
It's our
18.
generation.
I think it's now it's more like 30.
I would
We
be.
actually talk about this at work because working at the prison, we see a lot of inmates come in that are still staying with mom and dad. They were still staying with mom and dad when they committed the crimes, and they were 30 years old. Come on, man, you're 30 years old. You should have been out there working in the world, and they didn't have jobs. They didn't have anything. They were doing exactly what you said. They were playing video games.
Right.
I got a 35-year-old son that sits there and plays video games. So I have let me get this right, 13-year-old grandson who's doing the same thing you just said. Headphones on, you go over the house and you hear him screaming in the back room. What is wrong with him? Oh, he's playing a game.
Door shut.
But mom and dad don't think nothing's wrong with it. Oh, he's playing a game with his cousin. But who else is on the line too?
Yep.
We don't know. 2 o'clock in the morning, this kid is still playing the game on his phone on Friday night. Mom and dad's in bed sleep.
Well, I think, so some of the statistics of this generation is that they're the most protected generation. Because they've grown up with active shooter drills in their school. And I don't know what your interaction with your children has been with active shooter drills. My children will not go to the bathroom at school because they're afraid that something will happen and they will get stuck in the bathroom because an active shooter is in their school. Like, it's just so there's a perceived threat there, right? Like, they're living in a state of fear, right? But then I think we overcompensate. We think because they're home, they're safe. And so we do openly allow them, they're in their room, what harm could be done? Well, a lot of harm whenever we get into what we're opening them up to.
Right.
It's interesting.
Yeah. And what's coming, it's already here. We just don't know it because I've been ignorant to it. So that brings me to my next point is metaverses. And you're going to be like, are we talking about Marvel? Because that's what I thought. We're not. We're talking about a metaverse. And you already live in a metaverse. Did you know that? You look at Facebook and Instagram. They are governed by Meta because Mark Zuckerberg wanted us to understand that it was a metaverse, and he labeled it Meta. So if you go to your app, you look at Facebook, and you open it, and it says Meta, we're in a metaverse. So what is a metaverse? Yeah, I had to figure this one out. So Facebook wants us to believe that the metaverse idea is theirs, but it isn't. A metaverse is a concept, and it's been described as a digital world that allows virtual user engagement by mixing social networking, online gaming, augmented reality, virtual reality, and cryptocurrency. The metaverse, which provides access to leisure initiatives, including the ability to work, is described as a virtual world of the future. It's a virtual reality-fueled digital space with few rules, a battle for territory, and a buttload of confusing problems. So you're like, okay, you just said a lot of things to me, but what does this mean? So it means that in this space, you are probably not using it up to its potential, which is probably a good thing.
Right.
It's better to be ignorant in that way, but you can exchange cryptocurrency through Facebook. You can have these virtual AR reality games. Have you seen the people with the things on? Yeah, you can do that through Facebook. You can be in a virtual reality without the things through Facebook or Instagram, through these platforms. You may not be using it that way, but it does exist, sadly. And kids are using it that way because it's fun.
Right.
Why is it a problem? So imagine a world where your child is virtually harassed, physically or sexually, by someone walking around in the virtual world. But you're like, how can this be? Well, you know those little AR goggles things, majiggers, that I don't know the real words to them? Apparently, you can get groped virtually through those goggles. And it's going to get better, or it's going to get worse. I shouldn't say better. The whole conversation is going to get worse because the next thing that I'm going to talk to you about, we'll talk about how there's no regulations around that. So yes, your child can be exposed and abused in some sort of way in a virtual reality space.
Wow.
So how do we fix this issue? Well, or fight against it. Well, we have to be informed first about the potential brain impacts of virtual reality in young people. So we don't know what those things do.
No.
We don't know what there's no studies, there's very limited studies as to what those I think that's an Oculus, is that what it's called? Yeah. What that thing does, and there's not a whole lot out there. It's kind of like COVID. There's not a whole lot out there. But yeah, so it's just, yeah. And then you have to find resources to help you stay connected to the risk in the space. Find friends. We have a handy-dandy cybersecurity degreed person sitting with us right here. And you better believe I will like to pick his brain,
I'm open for it. So,
yeah. And he has opened that door for us to kind of talk about it. And he will, if you have a question, go to your friends, go to people you know.
Right.
We need to talk about this.
Yeah.
If we don't make it aware, we're never going to know. And what's the problem? What did Hosea say? People are destroyed for lack of knowledge.
I wonder what they're getting off of with the sexual, grabbing people virtually. I don't understand that.
It's mental.
It's fantasy.
Yeah.
So my mother-in-law and I were talking about this. We want, our reality as it stands, we want to think that things are great and merry, and we don't like for anything to impact our lives. That doesn't feel good.
No.
It hurts.
Yes.
Death, divorce, separate, whatever the case, whatever's coming against your family, that's hard. That's a hard space to deal with.
Okay.
What better way to just get away from it? And did you want to comment?
You asked a question.
What was the question?
I'll give you an answer. Rape,
Mhm.
anything that has to do with anything on that level, it started in your mind. It is not started physically. People think physical rape is physical rape. But I raped you before I touched you.
Yeah.
Because they
Yeah.
thought
And
about
that's
it.
what you guys need to know is, the crime is already committed in the mind
Oh,
before
they
it's
said that.
committed physically.
100%.
So all this stuff that you're seeing now is being brought out digitally, but it was there mentally way before, because the first computer is the mind.
Yeah, sure.
And here's my sideburner, I know he's got to agree with me because it's the truth. The mind is the first computer. You processed everything through your mind. You know, you read it, your eyes saw it, you put it in your brain, and there it is. So yeah, so this, you saying, what do they get out of it? They get the same satisfaction that they got before, because it's in the mind.
Yeah, what is it? Is it like a premature act, or what's it called?
Yeah.
There's a preconceived, premeditated. Thank you, that's the word.
Preconceived and premeditated.
A lot of these are premeditated, you know, and the reason they go to a space that's virtual is because, again, we're gonna get to it, it's not governed. It's not governed. So another way to protect yourself or in your family from this is to ensure your home's network is filtered and secured. And again, in that pamphlet that I passed out, there's some really cool devices that Kyle has shared with us that if you're looking for something like that, it's definitely a place to go look at. It's so funny that you're getting into this because this is the next threat, and I had to really dig into this. I even asked Kyle, I said, "What is this?" He's like, "Oh, that's a good question. I don't know." So, what is the internet stack power? Basically, in a nutshell, I'm going to try to do this in a nutshell and quickly. It is a space that what can be governed, and there's limited government, I guess, in our known sites like Google, Bing, Yahoo, you name them, the big ones that we know. Those are governed. They can be governed. Now, they're not all the way governed, but they're regulated by law enforcement or laws and stuff like that. But the problem is not everything is, and not everything will hold up in court. So we're going back to the metaverse, and we're talking about inappropriate activity. And you find out about it, and you're hot, and you want to take that person down. It's not going to stand in court.
And can I add something?
Yeah, definitely.
The problem with it too is these companies that own metaverses are privately owned. So say your daughter lives in the US, lives in the state of Illinois, the server they are on the metaverse with is located in France, let's say, and the perpetrator is located in China. Well, where does this jurisdiction land? Does it land with the state of Illinois? Does it land with the US? Does it land with France, because that's where the server is? Does it land with China, because that's where the perpetrator is? Like, there's no clear outline there.
So it gets messy really fast. And so like I had put up here, child protection laws and regulations are limited. If we don't know who owns the digital space, the conduct or activity in that space generally progresses towards immorality. And people are going to want to go to that space because it's free reign, free for all. And our children, guess what? They're in that space. And they don't know it. They don't know it. And we don't know it either. But here we are. I'm going to be shining this light very bright now. So what's the threat? Kyle mentioned it. The disturbing act of this trend on children is obvious. The darker internet provides fertile ground for child exploitation of every kind. Every kind. And your kid will see it. Just like we got, just laid out a very beautiful explanation of the eyes. If they may not be exposed, because through a book, a magazine, that's old news, through anything in your house, but they're exposed virtually.
Also, like, when it comes to that, you can, like, I know when I got on social media when I was younger, I was, like, young, but, like, you can lie about your age to, like, get on certain social medias, and I know, like, TikTok's good about, like, if you, like, report, like, someone who looks younger, like, they're good about, like, deleting, like, banning them and deleting their account, but, like, I, like, got a Facebook when I was, like, in 5th grade, I think, because I just lied about my age, and so, like, yeah, so I think, like, in, like, Instagram, like, you just have to, they don't, like, check your age or anything like that, so you can just lie about your age.
Yeah,
So,
anyone
yeah.
can have an account, and you can have multiple accounts,
Yeah.
and you can be hidden in those accounts.
I know.
Oh, these predators, they're smart. They're smart. And then, you know, how do we solve it? How do we go against this? And that's a tough one, because that means involving government, and that means us taking action, and that means our government knowing what is happening. And sadly, they don't. They don't know they don't even know who wants to tackle this?
Well, that's the issue.
Well, yeah.
They know, they just don't want to tackle it. I mean,
That's a massive issue.
it's a lot of money.
Why do you think I didn't? I didn't even want to step through it. That's ridiculous. That's crazy. But in the very least, we must be educated about the risks, and it starts with us. So if you know the government wants to have a party governing our schools, have at it. I'm gonna have a party governing my house. You know, it is what it is. If they, you know, maybe they need to revert their eyes on something different. You know, something that really matters. I'm not saying that school doesn't matter, but I'm just saying, you know, you guys know what I mean. So the last one, and I'll kind of go through this one pretty quickly because we're coming up at time, and I want to be mindful and respectful to you guys. But this last one is what's coming, and this is the one that every one of these private tech industries are fighting to be the first ones to launch it. If it's not, well, it's kind of already launched, but to set standards for it. And this is Web 3.0. It's basically the next stage of, so we live in Web 2.0, where, I wish I would have wrote this down because I had a really good video that really laid it out for me. But if I can remember, Web 2.0, we're still kind of, these private industries are kind of governed, kind of like what we were talking about there, but it's very limited. Web 3.0 is free for all. There's no, the beauty that they try to sell is everything is shared freely, content is owned by you, and there's no censorship, no one's tracking what you're saying, and the one thing that they keep saying, but I wrote that everything is permanent because it is, they keep saying that it's not permanent. You can take it down if you want. That is not true. They're using technology to keep it in a vault where people can download it for as many years to come. So, basically this is coming, and it's coming in the next 5 or 10 years. And the threat behind it is the anonymity, I don't think I said that right, is that always fuels exploitation. Boundless digital freedom always leads to unspeakable digital behavior, trauma, child sexual assault, and our worst moments will exist forever. So, in this space, nothing will be governed. That's the point of it. Nothing will be censored. That's the point of it. It is basically an adult space, and it's a huge space. And it's the dark web, basically. Darker web. There was something I had read that this will include like child pornography, the sale of human organs, human sex trafficking, murder for hire, weapons, drugs, and stolen information. So it's just going to get, quote unquote, better. It's not going to get better, it's going to get a little worse.
Please come, Jesus.
I know, for sure. So again, how do we fight against it? Well, again, it's coming in 5 to 10 years. We're going to step through it. Facebook may step through it. We already gave up our privacy.
Yeah.
We're giving up all these things for some benefit of being connected, but this is going to be even next level. So it's a fight for these private tech industries to get in there and to set their standards and to be against, regulation around it, because that's what they want, to be able to do what they want, a free creative space. Free creative space. and control the standards outside of government regulation. So it's important to be child advocates for our children and to really think about how we plan on stepping through this digital space that we're going to be walking through with them if you're not already there. Let me see here. Okay, so in the handout, I'm going to briefly just kind of talk through these a little bit. They're all in your handout, and if you have further questions, again, Kyle put together that handout, a bulk of it I added here and there. But I know in my family, we're a digital family. We work for companies, we work for industries. So as far as digital space, no, my child will not have social media until she's 30. But you know, there will be a way to connect with her. So what does that look like? Because now Jess had mentioned something really that really struck me. Kids these days, they want to fit in. Having a phone is about fitting in, and you know, having a smartphone is the way to go. But who's gonna give your kid a smartphone? I mean, you can, but like I'm so terrified. So there are a few options. Gab Wireless is I have them out of order in my thing, but Gab Wireless is a contract or no contract phone. It has no internet, nothing, no social media. It's just literally a phone, but it looks like a smartphone. And you can read more about it in the handout. TrueMe is a similar approach. It is a phone. It does have a little more. It's more for older kids, like in their older teens. It has more options to navigate some of the media, but not all of it, and it has just some parental guidances there. The Circle Home Plus is a digital device that you can use at home to monitor. So on your phones, if you have an Apple, because it's the only thing I can relate it to, you have those parental control options. This does all your devices. So it's not just your phone, it's like your gaming, your computers, everything. And it's not regulated to, or it's not just down to iPhones, it's everything. These apps, so I don't even know how to say that, Kyle. Custodio, I'm assuming. It's a parental control app. I can talk. Google Family Link, Bark. Those three are parental control apps. Again, your pamphlet will show the pricing and stuff. We kind of did some homework for you, and that's okay. We don't mind doing that at all to get you guys started. These two are routers for your home, so to protect your security and your Wi-Fi. And then I put this one down here, Protect Young Eyes. So when Philip and I, we meet with a counselor every now and then, and one of the things that they suggested for our home was Covenant Eyes. That's more for adults, website security usage. But one of the innovators of Covenant Eyes, or creators of Covenant Eyes, came up with Protect Young Eyes. So Protect Young Eyes is a branch off of Covenant Eyes, and it's a very good parental online resource for anything digital, anything. And they do the homework for you, and they put it in these articles that are like quick bite-size articles that you can just read like a minute or two, where you can get what you need from it and kind of digest it and go back and you can save it. So that's on there. Let's see what else is on there. We did have some apps and sites to stay away from, and Kyle put the reasons why, and I firmly agree with him on those. So yeah, take a look at that and see what you think. And if you have questions or do you just want to talk about it, I'm available. I'm open. I am if we're not having these conversations, we would never know. I was talking to Jessica about it. I'm like, I never knew you were fighting that. I'm so siloed over here, but we don't need to be that way. We need to have this village, this space where we can have these conversations. All right.
I'm so glad I don't have that problem. My kids are grown.
That's funny.
We do have grandkids though.
Yeah.
Do you want to wrap us up, or do you want me to?
Yeah, I'll wrap us up. So we just have some ideas for how conversations that you can be having to kind of set the stage of how your home's going to operate. So talk about how has media impacted your life. You need to have that conversation. We need to have conversations about how you want your family to operate in that digital space. Okay, and then I'm not sure. Create zones where media is allowed and not allowed, right? There needs to be spaces where phones are not allowed. Phones are not allowed at the dinner table. No, absolutely not. You know, for us, nighttime is family time, so your phone is not in your hands. It's on the counter in the kitchen. You know, phones don't go in the bedroom. Any device does not go in the bedroom, you know. So have those conversations, and then enforce those, right? We're going to enforce all of those boundaries. And if we make a mistake, right, we've ventured into a space and we're like, no, I'm not ready. It's okay. Back out and do what you need to do for your family, and take those opportunities for really correcting our kids, because they're going to mess up, right? But they need grace just like we need grace. And I know, like, this is a really heavy subject, and there's a whole lot of, like, doom and gloom coming, it seems like. But we have to talk about these things. For me, it's so intimidating, I don't want to dig into it. I need somebody to help me dig into it. So these conversations are really helpful, and they're absolutely necessary, because God was very clear. My people are destroyed for their lack of knowledge. We don't want our children destroyed, because they need to make heaven.
Yes.
So, all right, can we wrap our night up with prayer, or anything before we move into prayer?
No. And you summed it up beautifully. Our goal is for our children, going back to our main focus of this entire series that we'll continue to have a conversation about next week, is for our children to walk in truth and to not be afraid. There's no fear, you know. If we're fearful about it, we are here, and we're digging into it, and we're finding things that we don't like.
Yeah.
But at least we're uncovering it, and we're just, I feel like if I'm more prepared, I'm not as afraid.
Yeah.
And I just, you know, I don't want my kids to have that same fear. And I don't want to just say no to say no, because I can't get that way. I'm like, nope, don't want to think about it now. Nope, we'll talk about it at a later time. So just remember that, and just love on them. And I think for me, my children, I want to protect them, and we all do. We all want to protect our children, but we understand that we've got to help them navigate through this space too. So, I don't know. You want me to close out in prayer?
Go for it.
Okay. Lord, thank you so much for this conversation. Thank you that we have this fellowship here where we can talk about the heavy things, but understanding that you are still the light of this world, that you are the light within us, God. Help us to uncover things that are going on in our own lives, that correction is a blessing for us, God. That whatever we're seeing, whatever we're doing, God, convict us convict us first of our own faults, Lord, so we can help be the light for our children. And I pray for this world, Lord. You put us in here for a reason. You've given us this knowledge here tonight for a reason, Lord, that we can feel empowered through you, God, that you give us strength to continue to walk through this digital space, Lord. I pray for everyone that showed up today. I pray that they see what impacts this has in our lives, and that they're able to take that home with them and just digest and discern it for their own lives, Lord. I thank you for a beautiful evening tonight, and I pray that each one of us return home safely. In Jesus' name.